On Grunts, welcome to the live chat for SERE Challenge 2, Episode 3. Coming to you live from the occupied territory, halfway unoccupied, and you may notice a couple differences about this one because Brent is actually hosting this one. He has hijacked the platform and will be in control. So if a bunch of strange gay porn shows up, it's not on me.
Be careful what you say there. I have all the power.
I know, man.
I can boot you out of this stream and it'll still be streaming on your channel.
I'm showing a lot of faith in you in this one.
We've already been talking about dressing you up in a gimp mask and everything, Randall.
All right, so yeah, Brent has escaped captivity and resisted interrogation. And now he's on the run. And I've been taking notes on this. So like everybody, we do the live chat so everybody can chat and have fun with it and everything. And I sit there and work and I take notes and see what people are saying. And sometimes I get some inspiration because I've seen all these episodes hundreds of times between episode editing and everything. So I already have some things that I'm thinking about. But let's get into, so Brent, when you're escaping, there's a lot of things going through your mind, but what are your priorities as you're leaving the tent and beginning your evasion part? What are the most important things you're thinking about?
Well, priority one for me, as soon as I escaped, was create a time distance gap, right? Get as much ground as humanly possible on them. And, you really can't put in perspective how far I traveled before I actually really came to a stop and, started to apply camouflage face paint and get my flexi cuffs off and stuff. But my priority number one was I had to get distance, right? And, you made a comment in the video about hey, if I just got in the tree line and hunkered down, I might be in trouble once Jared gets there. Well, yeah, I was thinking about that. So I wasn't about to get caught in the first 10 minutes. And I'm sure Jared, when we get to him as a survivor, will say the same thing. You have in the back of your mind, the hunter's right on your ass. And it's just propelling you to keep going. And I don't know exactly how far I moved and ran essentially, but I was booking it to try to get as far as I could, as fast as I could, and to get into the thickest shit I could to create that time distance gap, to give me some wiggle room so that I can start applying camouflage face paint, popping off my flexi cuffs, seeing what I had in my gear, and so on and so forth. Plus I'm battling the temperature. It was 19 degrees or whatever that, early that morning. So, keeping on the move was keeping me warm. The second I'm stopping, I'm yeah, it's fucking cool.
Yeah, I mean, sitting for that long in those temperatures and then going to a all-out run, and we pointed you in the worst direction possible. So when me and Stoker were setting it up, had obvious avenues blocked, to keep you off the road and to try to go a certain direction. But I made sure I put it in there when Jared came in behind you. He's just man, this shit is thick. So that 192 meters that I put up, that was about as far as you had gotten. And so that was mostly an uphill climb through those manzanitas. So people could see on the screen, it was pretty much black. Sorry. So how are you even navigating that in pitch black? Are you just barreling through shit? You trying to be kind of stealthy a little bit and crawl, or what's your approach for getting through all that?
There was, the sun was just beginning to crest. So there was a little bit of ambient light, just enough for me to see, not too terribly far in front of me, but I could see immediately in front of me. Right. So I remember there being just enough to kind of make out what was going on. And when you're out there, there's little, the terrain kind of always has a little path, right? It's not a straight path. It's all right, I'm gonna go this way, and then it's gonna curve me, and now I'm going this way, and then I'm going this way, and I'm trying to stay in a general direction. So as I'm moving, I think I found my compass pretty early because it was in one of the front pouches, and I was able to get an azimuth after you told me which direction to go off of. So I was able to navigate fairly, I'm not going to say easily, but I was able to navigate essentially in those low lighting conditions enough to create that time distance gap between me and where I started off from.
All right. So your priority in the beginning was just get the hell out of there and get some distance. That makes sense. That's pretty much, I think, how most of us would approach it. So Jared, well, actually, let me bug Brent one more time. So I mentioned that people got smart cards last year, and that got them on course. But I wanted to actually simulate somebody trying to rescue an escaped dude. So I purposely didn't talk to you for, I think, about the first 30, 40 minutes. And so what's going through your mind when you, like, just to remind people, like, you don't have any clue where you're supposed to go? Because I wanted to make sure you just had a lot of isolation time and just be like, what the hell do I do? And then kind of give you a chance to start. I wanted to see if you would call me first. But you just found your compass, but you don't know where to go. So what were you kind of thinking about which direction to head once you realized there wasn't a smart card or anything?
Yeah. So again, like I knew I needed to get far enough away from that camp to give me that wiggle room so that I could go through my gear. And I was, in my head, I was thinking, there's a card inside my gear with an azimuth on it. Right. So priority one was get the fuck away from where that camp was, right? Get as far as I could to enough distance to where I was comfortable enough taking off my gear and starting to go through so that I could find that card with the azimuth. And then, get my bearing and get going. Plus there were some other tasks I wanted to do. I wanted to get camouflage face band on me as fast as possible. I wanted to get that flexi cuff off my hand as fast as possible. So it's like priority one was get away, create distance, apply camouflage face paint, and then get that one flexi cuff off my wrist. And then I was going to find my azimuth in my gear somewhere. And then you called me at some point while I was trying to, locate that azimuth, because that's when I was like, there's no freaking azimuth in this gear.
Yeah, I thought that'd be a little more realistic. So Jared pretty much comes in. We synced it up. We actually had comms from where you escaped all the way up to where Jared was hanging out at my place. But usually we don't. So just like last year, we planned on not having any communications because of the big ass mountain in the way. So that timing actually worked out perfectly. We didn't want to give Brent any more than a 10-minute head start, which that's not a lot, guys. 10 minutes trying to get through that stuff and get the hell, off of your insertion point. So pretty much Jared comes in blind as the hunter. It gets pointed in the direction. So Jared, as you guys are rolling down there, it's about a 20-minute drive the way Roy drives. So that's long and cold and dark. What kind of preparation is going through your head? Like strategy wise, just whatever your thoughts are coming down that hill.
It's hard to say. I don't really remember exactly what my thoughts were. All I do remember saying to myself, I just need to keep pushing so I can keep pushing Brent and trying to maintain a certain distance from him, as much as I can, knowing or not knowing what I know. So he has a 10-15 minute head start. You can cover a lot of ground in that time, depending on the terrain and whatnot. But if you're going up that hill, that first hill that we went up, that was a heck of a hill. And it took 10-15 minutes just to get to almost to the top of the hill, not quite to the top. So I feel like I'm on him, and I'm also feeling like I've lost him at that point too. And then I got my intel update about an hour, I guess, after I climbed that hill, or after we started there at the bottom. And I can't remember who gave it to me. They said I was 2 kilometers or 2,000 feet away from them. I'm like, holy cow, that can't be right. So I know I was getting some bad intel at that point. So I was just trying to head in the general direction that I was pointed in, that I was shown that Brent went to.
Yeah. And I put up the temperature. It's funny, you know, we're down there at that creek, which is pretty much bare at that time, but we still have an effect down there from the moisture. So up at my place, when you left, it was probably I think right around freezing, or maybe upper 20s. But by the time you get down to where the creek is, that's when it was 19. And so we woke up, you know, and we were just like, holy crap, man. So, you know, you were all dressed up when you actually got inserted. So did that affect you at all? The, you know, the actual weather?
No, not really. I wore my heavy Gore-Tex coat with the liner on the way down there on the quad ride, just because I knew the wind was going to be hitting me and everything. And as soon as I got down to the bottom, I took that off because I knew I was going to be running and gunning and going up and down these hills and getting hot. And there was a huge temperature difference between up there at the cabin and down there at the bottom, at least 10 or 15 degrees. But once I got moving up that hill, I mean, I started to sweat, and it's 19, 20 degrees, and I'm sweating. And all I had on was my cami blouse and a grid fleece thing underneath as a base layer, you know, both tops and bottoms. And I was sweating by the time I got up to the top of the hill. So I knew I needed to stop for a little bit and kind of let myself cool down some, so I wouldn't overheat and oversweat.
So the way it works with like intel in the beginning, you know, Brent basically gets nothing. He just gets a call from his you know, his rescue team. Hey, you need to head this way and we'll pick you up. So it's pretty much the same for the hunter. You just get pointed in a direction. Like Bill freaking, you know, dramatized it for the video, but he also like gave you a specific direction to go, which is exactly how Brent took off. So the whole idea is to just try to get you on his trail as quickly as possible, because you don't know, like we can see Brent on the trackers, but we don't know what he's doing. So what's your game plan? Are you thinking you're going to try to fly through there and just catch up to him and maybe hear him? Or are you already expecting it's going to be like a long haul of, you know, playing chase out there?
Yeah, I'm kind of expecting it's going to be a long haul of playing chase. In the back of my mind, and I'm hopeful that I'm gonna hear him moving around in the brush, because it was just so thick out there. But for the most part, the whole time I was out there, I felt like I was really far from him, and there was times where I kind of thought I was close, especially after an intel update. But you know, when I was out, I never saw any sign or any ground support of him the entire time I was hunting him. So I didn't have any of that to follow. So I'm relying mostly on intel updates, my hourly intel update. But you know, you just have it in the back of your mind that you feel like you're so far away from them. You don't hear anything out there. You figured if he's with 100 or 200 meters, you might be able to hear him moving around in all that thick underbrush. And I never heard anything like that, at least for the first hour or so.
Yeah, Brent was pretty ninja-like. And yeah, sound travels out there depending on what you're doing. Like there's going to be some stuff coming in future episodes where you can hear each other around each other. And it's, you know, I mean, there's other noises out there too. So that's the thing. You just go stomping through the manzanita and risk giving your position away as the hunter chasing something, and it was just like a squirrel that jumped to another branch. So there's that. Yeah, so you know, I think what is really cool having you guys with like a tactical mindset, Bill covered it last year too. Like the whole idea is when you escape is to get the hell away from there. So it doesn't matter. You don't like, that's why I was asking if you guys had game plans, you know, but even if you don't have a direction, you just got to go. And so that's what they taught us. And that's what, you know, Brent pretty much did. And I mentioned that, like, if he just you don't know what guys are going to do. So he could have just done like the movies where they're running from Jason and they just go hide in the bush, and then Jared's right there behind him, and game over. All right, so we got a question popping up. In rewatching, did you guys notice anything you would have done differently? So let's stick to this last episode. So Brent, you're the main survivor this time. What do you got?
I'm trying to think back. I can't say off the top of my head that I would have done anything differently per se. I kind of did what I intended to do, and that was, get enough distance from that camp and, subsequently Jared, so that I could get my task done. Obviously I wish I would have got my flexi cuff off quicker, but I had to get, the 550 cord out and go through the process of getting that all taken care of. But I think my priorities were pretty right on. I got the hell out of Dodge. I got some distance. In my head, like, hey, get my exposed skin camouflaged as fast as possible, get that one remaining flexi cuff off my hand, try to find that azimuth, my compass, my land navigation stuff, established comms, and I don't think I personally would have changed anything. I do believe I doglegged going up that hill. I went up so many maybe 50 meters or so, and then I doglegged, took a 90-degree hard turn, and then changed direction. So that might have helped me throw Jared off in the early hour of the competition. So I personally I wouldn't have changed anything. I think as far as my method of escaping there, I think went pretty well.
All right. Well, Jared, same question. I know we're just getting into it on your part, but do you have anything to add to that on your side?
I mean, no, there wasn't really anything I would have changed in this episode that I would have done differently. Speaking for this episode, we're just out there for the first couple hours and just kind of getting settled in, trying to get our mindset in there, trying to gain intelligence, and just kind of getting settled into what we're trying to accomplish. He's trying to accomplish one thing, and I'm trying to accomplish the exact opposite of him. And it's just trying to fall into that so we can continue on throughout the day. So I don't think there's anything I would have done differently for this episode. No.
Yeah, so I think this brings us into a interesting talking point. For the military guys, especially if you've been to combat, we always differentiate between theory and planning and shit actually happening on the ground. So, grunts, a lot of us joke about the best plan going to shit as soon as the bullets start flying. So you guys had watched the first season. You had done some research before coming out and mentally prepared yourself. You kind of looked at the terrain. You knew about weather. So for people who might not understand this, like, what's like your initial feeling? So you got this build up. You've been planning and thinking about it, mentally preparing. And then Brent, as you actually walk out of that tent and get into the woods and start running, that's when the reality sets in. The temperature really hits you. Probably legs are frozen, stuff like that. Like, so what's the difference between everything you've done planning up to it versus once you actually take off into the woods in the darkness?
So like, I know Jared and I had talked about this on a prior stream, but it's like we both did like map reconnaissance, on Google Earth before we went out there. We didn't know exactly where we were going to be start, but you kind of like get an overview of the AO and you have an idea of what the train's going to look like and stuff. And really, all that did for me was tell me like, hey, there's some serious inclines out there. That's about all that did for me, because once you get out there, especially in the low light conditions, like, I don't know, I have a fucking clue where I am. And, I'm just moving. At that point, I'm just surviving and getting away from, the enemy. And then to dive down into my gear and figure out what exactly I had. So this first episode is like, there's just mass unknown. And it's just, for me, it's get away and figure out what I got and figure out what the situation is. And then once I had the idea, okay, now I've gone through my gear. I've got my compass. Hire's telling me I need to take a, northeasternly route. I know what I have on my person. Now I can start adapting to the situation on the ground.
Oh, real quick, as far as the loadout goes, people got a kick out of that about the shit paper. That was an accident. Me and Bill, we were setting your stuff up, and I was gonna just throw a whole freaking pack of baby wipes in there, but Stoker he was like, dude, just break them up for him, and I'm like, and we kind of went back and forth on that. And I'm like, I'll do that later. Never did it. So
yeah, that sucked.
It wasn't until you actually told me, I was like, oh yeah, forgot about that. All right. But I knew I told you could have used my cravat. It's all about improvising with the stuff you get.
So, what's funny about that is I didn't realize I had a second cravat on me until hours into the competition. And it was the one that was initially put on my head as a blindfold. But then later on, when I was getting interrogated, you guys pulled it down. It was just sitting around my neck. I had no clue it was there until I went to take. I don't want to get too hard ahead of myself, but I didn't initially know that was on there. So had I realized that there was a second cravat around my neck, I probably would have used that as shit paper. But my intent was to keep the first one because I was going to need it for first aid, and that sterile bandage popped up, and I'm like, well, I've used MRE shit paper and it's a lot smaller than this, so I'll make this work.
Yeah. He didn't give me shit paper, and he didn't give me any food for the day, so I was out there all day without any food.
Yeah, I've got just lists full of ideas for how to have fun with this, and I think I threw a couple out in our chat group. But I'm gonna every time I'm gonna mix it up with different stuff. So if people's batteries, if they get a headlamp and they don't find batteries in it, but they have some other feminine toy in there and they wonder what the hell that's for, that might be to hold their batteries. So if they just get mad at me and throw it in the woods, well, there goes their batteries. So stuff like that. But yeah, so this came up also during the live chat. Only one canteen of water, no filters. No. So I would love to include that part of the survival field craft where they have to gather their own water, maybe treat it. The problem is this time of year where it's at, that's kind of, it's not impossible, but it's so unfeasible. It would basically just serve as getting the guy caught. So I give them, so how to get around that is I give them just a 1 quart canteen, which in these conditions and these temperatures, that sucks, but it's doable. And that just also adds to the resistance and survival that also applies to the environment, the temperature and what you're dealing with. So that's part of it, is rationing your water, being smart with it, and also having to deal with being thirsty. Brent and I have talked about this before. Like, I know for me in the Army, being a Southern boy and coming into the Army, seeing people drink 10 liters of water a day, I'm just like, what's the matter with you guys? And once you get conditioned to drinking tons of water a day because you were forced to, all of a sudden you get a quarter canteen and you're like, shit, man, this is all I get. Like, your body will start to stress you out,
Hey, can I add on this? So when I was getting interrogated, when I first saw Bill take my, and I keep saying my deuce gear, right? Because it's like when I first got to the challenge, I had brought that deuce gear, but I had to give it to Randall the second I got there, right? Because I knew he was going to load it up with stuff. And I had already pre-packed it with some things, like some warming layers and shit like that. So when you guys hear me say, like, he fucked me on warming layers, because, I had like a waterproofing bag with like a woolly pulley sweater in it. It's stuff like all stuffed in there, but like he had taken all that shit out. But anyways, I had no idea, because when I was getting interrogated and, Bill first walks in with my gear on, and he takes it off and he sets it on the chair behind him. At one point he's interrogating me and he pulls out the canteen from the deuce gear, right? And he's like, do you want a drink? And I'm like, no, because I knew that was the gear I had to steal. And I knew I was only going to get one canteen because there was only one canteen in there. And I'm like, if I take a drink from that water, I'm drinking from my one canteen that I know I'm going to have to go through this challenge with. And so like Bill takes a big swig right in front of me and I'm like, oh, you bastard, drinking my fucking water.
So next time we need to add to the psyops to that and have him walk in and just dump your canteen right in front of you. So you're thinking that like that's my water, so we can just have the interrogator just or just in your canteen or something. And then later on, you know, when you got the blindfold back on, we switch it out. Like that's mind games, man. We can totally have fun with that. All right, so we got a question. Jared, as the hunter, what do you look for as far as tracking goes?
Well, like I said just a little bit ago, there was no sign or ground spore of any kind that I was able to see from that Brent left behind. So at that point, I'm just looking for looking for light discipline, movement. Movement is a huge thing, and then sound. See if I can hear them moving out there in the bushes. And those are really the only two things that I have. Sorry, I'm moving around. I'm on my cell phone. Those are really the only two things I have to go on is his light discipline and the movement and sound discipline. And other than that, it's just the intel updates of where he is, at what direction from me, and how far.
Yeah, that's the big one out there is light and noise discipline. Like you could probably find some tracks out there, you know, if you're going through mud and you happen to come across the guy's path. But as far as like actively tracking, you know, ground spore and stuff like that, that's kind of, I won't say it's impossible, but that's not really going to be a big deal. Like I showed it in this episode when Brent gets his flexi cuffs off, he kind of buries it a little bit. And so that could have gone a couple ways. Like Brent was burying his flexi cuffs he ripped off, but at the same time, he was also disturbing leaves around him. So, you know, Brent had to do something with it, but he also could have given himself tracks. But at the end of the day, Jared would have had to basically come the same exact path Brent did and walk onto that and be like, oh, all these leaves are disturbed. Or if Brent would have went the other way and just left the flexi cuffs on the ground, you know, but yeah, as far as like real tracks like that, I mean, I just, you guys tell me your thoughts, but I think that's going to be, unless we have snow out here, I don't think that's going to be a real possibility.
Yeah, I think the other thing on that is, you know, when I took off, it was still dark, you know, and it's like you're not going to see spore without the light at least out, you know, unless he's coming out with a flashlight, and that's going to be even harder to find spores. Finding spores already hard. And then one of the first things I remember hitting, going, you know, running off is I ran into a bunch of logs, and I had to jump up on the logs and like walk across a bunch of logs, you know, to get over them, to get out of there. Well, you know, I'm not leaving footprints when I'm walking on top of logs. So, you know, that could have thrown him off too. But I think the number one thing was the fact that when he started first pursuing me, the sun was down, right? So you're not going to be seeing those spore, if there is any, with that, you know, small amount of light out there.
You know, so it's not like, go ahead, Randall.
Well, I was going to ask Brent, did you consider that like covering up tracks or breaking branches or anything like that?
Not in that first hour, because in the first hour, it's like, dude, I'm hearing the ATV coming. It's like, this dude is on my ass. And literally in my head, it was like, if I don't keep moving, he's going to be on top of me. And I don't know what kind of intel he's being fed. So there was a lot of unknown. My first priority was just get the fuck out of there, get away from him, get to a point where like I'm far enough away that where I can stop and I can hear. Cause you know, like Jared was saying earlier, it's hard to move out there without making noise. So if I could get far enough away to where I can hunker down and go through my gear, I would at least have some possible auditory, contacts if he is on my ass, and then I can throw my shit back on and get moving again. So.
Yeah. And to add to that, I don't think I mentioned this because I didn't think it needed to be said, but last year when they did tasks that we forced them to do, we did kind of halts because we're making them do a fire and all that. So this year we didn't do any of that. So Brent is going through his gear as Jared is heading in his direction. So yeah, that's crucial that you got away and did that. And we were watching that on the tracker. You know, Jared was still doing his thing at the same time you were doing that. So just to so as people are watching the future episodes, to think about that. There's no pauses or any of that shit this year. And so with that being said, the survival tasks that we forced last year, like this year, it's going to be like assumed. So if you're out there at night and it's cold as shit, it's all up to you if you want to make a fire and how you want to do that and all that. So with the loadout, I just give you a couple things to improvise with. So let's get into that with the loadout. You know, you mentioned maybe having to start a fire. So yeah, it did get down to like the 20s the next night. So what would be if you're going to do a shelter or a fire, what did that cross your mind at all up into this episode, or were you just going to deal with that later?
Oh, I had no doubt that I was going to have to build a shelter, and you know, not to reveal too much, but like you will see me repeatedly, assuming the footage got used in the episodes. But I'm repeatedly saying like, you know, hey, I'm going to have to, you know, build a shelter and make a fire later because it's gonna. I know the temperature is going to get really low, right? And all I had in my gear was a survival blanket, you know, and the fire, you know, the ferro rod and everything else. So it's like in my head, like it's not, you know, if I'm going to build a shelter, it's when I'm going to build a shelter. So that was just constantly going through my head. You know, I remember watching the previous two, and yeah, those were survival tasks, but both of those guys went well into the night, and so it's like I the whole time in my head, it's like, you know, I need to build a shelter at some point. I need to be looking for feasible locations to do this. So that was always in my head the whole time. And I didn't know, and if I can just throw this in, I don't know the distance. That was not conveyed to me, how far I had to travel to get to the endpoint. You know, for all I know, I got to freaking do 20 miles. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. Both sides, the sit reps are kind of limited, but the survivor, we split it up. You guys will see in the episodes, like I'm mainly, me and my team, we're mainly supporting the survivor. So he knows exactly who he's dealing with all the time. But I told them the survivor's course guidance if he needs it, and that's pretty. And maybe you could also choose sit reps like on the enemy, but it wouldn't be like the enemy's coming at you or something like this. Like you guys will see how we do those sit reps. But as far as his course guidance goes, yeah, no distance, just like you guys episode, the survivor gets told what direction to head in. Not even an azimuth. So last time they got azimuth, this time it's like northeast. So Brent still has no idea where the hell he is in reference to it. And I'm glad he pointed that out, you know, the distance. He doesn't know how far he's got to go, which, you know, that wouldn't help you too much in the beginning, because it could be, we could say you got 1 mile to get to your endpoint, but the way everything works out, you might end up covering 4 miles. Like if you got to backtrack or you get chased in a certain direction or something. So, but yeah, that's kind of part of the mind games, is just keeping the survivor in the dark, you know, like just head in this direction. And yeah, so, oh yeah, go ahead.
Just to add on that, like, you know, I'm watching this episode, and it's telling me like how much distance I have left to the endpoint, and I'm like, shit, like I know where I was in relation to the endpoint at that point, and it's like I don't feel like I'm that close to the endpoint, you know. So. That terrain.
Yeah, that team, you know, it's line of sight. It's like, it sounds like an easy distance, you know, it's like no problem. But as it progresses, you know, I think I showcased that a lot better this time. Like that's why I added the elevation gain. But as it progresses, you know, you'll see like there's no line of sight. It's freaking, you know, up and down massive hills, these crazy terrain features, and like you said earlier, you get channeled into certain terrain features, like you know, in this episode, you were talking about how you wanted to get up to this saddle, Well, first you said you wanted to try to get down into the low ground because you didn't want to get up in high ground, but then later you were chasing a saddle, and so that'll come up. That'll come up later how that's working for you, because we'll show your progress going that way.
Yeah, my thinking on that was, I'm looking at it and I'm seeing two, massive peaks, and I'm like, if I was Jared, I would be up on that left peak. So my thinking was, I'm going to stay down here in this valley, right? Because obviously he's going to probably go to high ground where he can look down on it. Well, I'm going to stay down in this, thick vegetation down here. So even if he does see me, he's going to have to try to come down here to get me. So that was my thinking at this particular point in the game.
So Jared, you, from watching the first season and knowing your enemy, who you're going up against, what is your strategy to try to get Brent? Are you looking at LPOPs, or are you trying to chase him? What do you think you're actually going to be doing?
I was trying to do both. I was trying to keep enough pressure on him by moving just constantly as much as I could, to keep him either moving in a certain direction or keep him hunkered down. And then I also had to stop and do my skills check, stop and look and listen and smell and all that, So I would do that on occasion too for 15, 20 minutes. And that gives yourself a chance to kind of bring your body temperature down and your heart rate down a little bit and kind of relax and just kind of keep your head clear and keep it thinking in the correct way and not overthink things either. So it was kind of a twofold thing. You want to keep pressure on them, but you also want to maintain your stealth, because when you're moving, you can't be stealthy out there. There's hardly anywhere out there that you can be stealthy when you're moving. And but you also want to be able to listen for what he's doing out there if he's close by.
Yeah, and just to remind people, you don't know what the survivor's doing until an hour goes by and you get a sit rep on them. So this is going to play out really well in these episodes. Everybody's going to get to see how that messes with the hunter as well. But so between it, just going off of this first episode, between the sit reps you're getting, you're kind of realizing, Brent is moving at a pretty pace. Did that change you up at all? Like, were you coming into it, were you thinking Brent was just going to sprint to the end? Or were you, because you just said you were expecting to do some LPOPs and stuff, like how did what you were thinking Brent was going to do, how did that change once you got your first couple sit reps and realized what he was actually doing?
I think it kept me moving a little bit more. It definitely, once I got the sit reps, it definitely put a little bit more pressure on me. Because at one point I think he was southwest of me, and then he was south of me, and then he was southeast. So I'm thinking, well, he's getting ahead of me, so I need to step it up a little bit in my movement and try to at least parallel him and get ahead of him. So at some point, maybe he'll cross in front of me and I'll catch that. So it did pressure me a little bit to keep myself moving throughout the whole evolution.
All right. I got a question, but let me read this one. Randall, did you encounter any logistics problems? Nothing more than you would expect from doing something like this. It's a pretty large operation with a limited amount of personnel. So fortunately, from my experience in the grunt world and then later doing CA stuff, it wasn't anything that was, too major. The big problem I think that I've always had is comms. You always have comms issues, and all we can do is get out there and do checks and see what areas we're having issues with. And we have the redundancy with the trackers. So we lose. You guys will see again in this series, we'll lose comms and have issues. And so everything's, we always have backups. But I wanted to talk about the loadouts. So in the intro to this episode, you guys get to see just his text. I just wanted, it's an intro, so I wanted to get it up really quickly, that basically Jared gets to carry whatever the hell he wants. And then later on, I mentioned that he's supported by the scouting team, which is Bill and then our other bad guy. So Jared basically gets whatever the hell he wants when he wants. So just to clear that up now, Jared starts with all the stuff he wants to start with. And then in this episode, you see he mentions dumping off some of his cold weather gear to Stoker. And so that's a major benefit for the hunter, is he not only does he get to have all the cold weather gear he wants and any other tech, but he can also hand stuff off if he doesn't want to have to carry it. So I think that's like a pretty big bonus to the hunter. In the first season, they saw the hunter. He was like hanging out with us, eating sandwiches and stuff, while Bill's out there just dying, eating manzanita berries. So Jared going into it, Brent was unpleasantly surprised with his loadout. So Jared, you knew basically what all you were going to get, but I just wanted people to hear it from you, like going into it, how confident were you in your loadout helping you do your job out there?
I was very confident, and I was trying very hard not to carry anything extra that I had to. I didn't want to go out there with a backpack. I didn't even want to go out there with a butt pack or anything like that. What was in the LBE, the load bearing vest I had my night vision, a compass, binoculars, and just having some of that stuff on even hampered trying to crawl through some of these manzanitas, because you're literally have a 1 foot by 1 foot space to crawl in between these manzanita bushes. And if you're carrying a backpack or any amount of gear that's excess, you're not going to make it through these areas. So I was trying very hard not to carry anything extra that I didn't want. I had a canteen and I had a K-bar knife on me, I think, and on my belt, some medical supplies, just the basic stuff. And I didn't want to carry anything more than that either. Also, I knew that Stoker was going to be able to bring me stuff if I needed to, or I could drop stuff off to him. So that was a big help as the hunter. And it's not the same as when you're the survivor, because you got to carry all that stuff with you because you don't have that outside help.
Right. And people will see as we progress, you get fill-ups on water and all that. And so it's also part of morale. The survivor's isolated and he's got a minimal amount of gear. And I don't talk to him unless I give him an intel update or he calls me. But other than that, it's radio silence for each hour. So there was a question about manzanitas. Out here, you can actually eat them safely all year round. But around the time we do this event in November, like late fall and going into early winter, people make ciders with the berries, and that's when the berries actually taste good. So you could just walk around, like every now and then when I'm out here screwing around, I'll pluck them off and eat them. You just got to follow the standard advice, get it high, so there's not bear shit and everything on it. But I wanted to mention something. This question popped up earlier. When it comes time, I will tell people how long Brent was awake for total, from him leaving his house to the end of his run. So we can't give it all away, but just up into this Brent's, once you escaped, somebody was asking how long you had been awake at that point, including your travel day.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I remember getting up early that morning. Because I had a fairly early flight. It was in the afternoon, I believe. So, you got to get there. Plus, I was checking a firearm, so that takes extra time. So I got early. I can't remember the exact time. Maybe 6:30, 07, maybe Central Time. I'd go to the airport. And that's the other thing. I'm flying to San Francisco. That's Pacific time. It's 2 hours behind me. So whatever time it is, during the SERE challenge, I'm still plus 2 hours on top of that, right? So my body's, 2 hours ahead. I'm not conditioned to that time frame. But I got up at, probably 06:30, 07. Got to the airport in the afternoon. Flight was delayed. So that delayed my arrival to San Francisco airport. Then I get it there, I get picked up finally, and then that was another like 4-hour commute, and then I get there and they give me some beers and hot dogs, and that makes me fat and happy and sleepy, and then I go get a couple briefs, and next thing I know, I'm getting my ass thrown in the back of a pickup truck and dragged out some isolated camp in the middle of nowhere and kept up all night. So I don't know, I have no clue.
Yeah, so I actually calculated. I remember asking you about what time you got up that day a while back. So I calculated it, and you guys will hear that what the final thing is. But just to go through it real quick, like there's no real sleep in the situation you were in, but we did, in the video, the bad guy gave you like a dog blanket, like, here, see you in the morning, turd. So what kind of sleep, if any, did you get during that? The little the remaining time.
I don't. I'm not sure, because it's like a kid on Christmas, right? Like there's so much going on, and all you can think about is getting out of there and like hitting the ground and running. So I don't know what was me in deep thought or what was me passing out or what. So honestly, I can't tell you. I don't know. Plus it was cold as fuck. I had a wool blanket, and there was like a real thin, it might've been like what is that, swag roll? It's like a poncho liner.
Yeah, it was a swag man roll.
Yeah. So it's not much. It's not the greatest for, it's like, it would be like the equivalent of a Ranger roll out in, 19-degree freaking weather. So.
Well, there's a lot of guys that say they're fine with that until you make them actually do it.
Yeah.
So I saw a question a couple minutes ago. Somebody was asking if you considered the GoPro lens as far as action.
No, because I mean, guys, there's just, and people, I get this all the time on my like videos and stuff, like, oh, you're whatever's making a reflection. It's like some shit you have to live with. Like, you're issued an all black rifle, right? If you are to take rattle can to your issued all black rifle in the United States Marine Corps, and you're not fucking part of recon where you're authorized to do that, you're going to get NJP'd. So you have to live with the fact that you have an all solid black rifle. Like, there's things you can do to mitigate that, and put some like camo form in country. You're not doing that in the rear. You're going to get your ass kicked because you're not uniform with everybody else. Like, there's just certain things you have to accept. And, in this, hey, if you don't record everything that's going on, like, this is all for nothing. Like, this, in the end, this is a YouTube show for entertainment for people, right? So it's like I have to work with what I got. And no, the GoPro lens reflection was not even remotely a blimp on my radar.
And for as thick as it is out there.
Oh, go ahead, Jared.
And for as thick as it is out there, you could be wearing blaze orange in places and be 50 feet in front of each other and not see each other too. So that little GoPro lens isn't going to do anything to give you away.
We should do we should do like an army safety version of this where they got to wear PT belts and stuff. But I was out here watching it with Roy, and when you said rape whistle, he was like, "What did he say?" I was like, "Yeah, we call it rape whistle." And so I saw somebody say, "Don't lose that." But see, this is where I failed in season 1 because I had to go back and realize when we streamed that one live, people were asking, Bill did like his 360 circles, and he just started at Eric's camp and just worked his way out. And that's what got him onto him. But since you guys mentioned how close you can be to each other, like I had some people send me messages, how do you actually find him? And it's pretty sad because I never actually brought it up. So I'll do that now. But because this goes along with the shine thing, I'm pretty sure Eric didn't lay down. Bill was walking around him for almost an hour, and Eric didn't lay down or try to hide. He just kind of sat there. And so I'm pretty sure I could see it myself. So I'm pretty sure what got Bill to actually go down there and get Eric was he had this through night tack light I gave him. And I could see the reflection off of Eric's headlamp, not his GoPro, But the headlamps, they have that really like reflective stuff in there. And so every time he shined his through over there, I could just see it because I knew where Eric was, but I would just see it looked like somebody was just turning on like a little light. And I was like, uh-oh. So yeah, that was totally on me, not actually in the video, but I didn't realize that's what it was until later. So I didn't even get to bring it up into the live chats. But it's cool that is brought up. But I would assume, Eric was also untrained, but I would assume, if Brent's worried, you can correct me, but if you're being walked up on by Jared in the future, you're probably putting your head down anyway.
Yeah, and I probably would have pulled that. Well, no, I would have had it on my head just because in case it captured. That GoPro, I think it had a red flashing light. Like at least when you first push it, it starts that or something. So I don't know. I can't remember.
No, yours didn't. The one we have does, but I turned all the stuff off.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, because those LEDs, that's not cool at night when somebody's looking for you. So, and we also turned your
difference in the daytime, but at night it would have.
Oh yeah.
I think what I would have done, and I did this for, you'll see later. I'm only going to bring this up because I saw it in one of the trailers. But like when a drone flew overhead, like I would take it off my boonie and sit there and hold it so you could see my facial reaction to the drone overhead. So if that situation were to arise where like I hear him and he's getting real close, I probably would have pulled it off my head and like held it down so that you could see my face, so that I didn't have the big, freaking GoPro jock strap on my grape.
Yeah. And well, we'll get into all this later, but in season 1, if anybody's interested, you can go to I think it's episode 4 when the drone over his head during the day. You can actually see the drone in his GoPro footage. My wife found it. It's pretty funny because when I was editing it, I didn't see it. I knew it was on screen, but I just was like, it was too small. The GoPro couldn't pick it up. But it's in there. You can actually see it zooming around back there behind him. So you guys can throw in some more questions about this episode.
I was just going to add, Randall, as far as being camouflaged, I went the entire day, both as the hunter and the survivor, without ever putting any face paint on my face. I never put any camo paint on. I had my sniper veil that I wore on occasion, but for the most part, when I was just moving through the bush, I didn't even have that on. I had my boonie hat on a lot though too, but stuff like that just kept getting snagged and caught on all the bushes and brush out there. If he's close enough to be able to see me through my white face out there, we're pretty damn close, and at that point, camouflage only works so much.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of that depends on what you want to do. Like, they, of course, you learn face paint. That's basic, grunt camo. But you also you guys did have those materials out there, which can also work. But I'm sure there will be some people that would be upset with you for that. But the thing is, like I said, if somebody is that close to you, even if you have a white face, you should be putting your head down anyway. So especially if you realize, oh shit, I didn't put paint on my face. Like one of the stalks I did in sniper school, I did it pretty lazily. And, but I my face paint sucked and I didn't even have a scarf on me to break up my head and shoulder silhouette, that's a big no-no. But when I fired my first shot, they were walking the guy in to try to find me. And I just put my head down and that broke wet. And it also covered up my poorly painted face, and so the guy couldn't actually find me. He knew, I'll explain this in another thing, but he knew where I was, but he just couldn't walk the guy into me because he couldn't pinpoint me. So it works either way. I mean, it really all just depends on what's actually happening and what you have to use.
Yeah, I'll say, I mean, for me as a survivor, like camouflage was a priority. Like I put camouflage, at least, a quick job in the beginning. I put that on before I even got that, flexi cuff off my wrist. Like that was where I prioritized camouflage for me as a survivor. So it's like I got there. It's like, yeah, I still got a flexi cuff like attached to one wrist, but I'm going to put my face paint on first before I work that flexi cuff thing. So that's where I put my priority as a survivor. Like camouflage was an absolute priority. Reflection of the GoPro lens, no, that's not something that was on my mind. But camouflaging this, sexy white face of mine, that was definitely high on the tasker list.
Yeah, I mean, you never even know, like, because you do know the hunter has binoculars. So if a dude is looking in your area on glass, and you're just kind of hanging out, like, something covering your face would definitely make a difference than a white face in the jungle. So tell people about the flexi cuff situation. So I didn't work it into that video where you mentioned slipping your hand out, but you can obviously, when you say you got to get it off, you obviously have it on one. But I think it'd be funny to tell people how your night went trying to sleep like that. It was a funny story when you was.
Yeah. So when I first got captured, so when we first got there, if you guys watch episode 1, one of the first things he did is get a class on 2 different methods, right? So one was getting flexi cuffed in the front, another was getting taped with your hands in the front. And one of the things Stoker says, like, hey, if you get captured, give them your hands and try to like present that so that they're thinking like, oh, I'm gonna flexi cuff them here, as opposed to them thinking like, hey, I need to tell this guy to turn around, put his hands behind his back. Just present your hands so that you're kind of forcing that narrative and getting them to think like, hey, I need to get those cuffs on right now in the front. So that was priority 1. And then when they did that, when I got initially captured, they put the flexi cuffs on. One wrist was snug, which was, I think it was my left wrist. And my other wrist, although tightened down, it had just enough gap in it that I thought that I might be able to slip out of it if I work, right? So it's like if I pull my wrist back, it's not coming out. But if I really pull or, start contorting my fingers and stuff, I thought I could possibly get that out, right? So it's like when I'm getting interrogated, like I'm keeping my hands up, I'm trying to hide my wrist. I'm keeping the flexi cuff tight against my wrist to make it look like it's tight. And then when I, lay down for the night, I'm still flexi cuff, but I'm able, because I'm under covers, I can start working it to get my hand out, right? So it's like I'm able to, confirm. Oh, I think the Chi-Coms just zapped Randall.
They got him.
But I was able to get my hand out of the flexi cuff. And so it's like, once I did that, I'm like, oh, perfect. Now I can put it back in, and sleep in case they wake me up in the middle of the night. Here I am still flexi cuff. But when the time comes to make my escape, I can slip a hand out. And that way I have both hands free. So that I can grab the gear and make my escape. And now I'm not making my escape with both my hands flexi cuffed. I'm making my escape with both hands free, but a flexi cuff still attached to one hand. So that's why when I got to a point where I thought I was far enough away, I'm like, hey, I'm going to put the camouflage face paint on so I can get camouflaged up, and then I'm going to work on getting this flexi cuff because I can still move and operate with one, flexi cuff attached. So we thought a Chi-Com Tomahawk missile took you out your grunt-proof headquarters there.
I had to go shoot some reds for a minute. I had some ATF guys at my door. Yeah, I'm kind of out in the woods, so yeah, that's why Brent is hosted this one. But I heard most of what you were saying. But I saw a question pop up. I think it was the last episode. Somebody was asking about zip tied or duct tape from behind. And of course, some people are talking shit about that. It is what it is. But as you mentioned, that's exactly what they teach us too. So if you're in a situation like that and you willingly comply and present yourself how you want to be captured, if a guy wants to shoot you, he's going to shoot you. But if he wants to capture you, he's most likely going to be very pleased that you're complying. And so there's a very good chance that's going to work for you. That's why they teach it that way. But yes, the escape tactics that you guys were taught And most of the generic ones you're taught, like they work if it's behind your back as well. It's just a lot harder. So the same way Brent got out of his flexi cuffs, he could totally do that behind his back. It's a lot harder. So, and it would be more entertaining. Maybe we'll force that on people, but it is possible though. So people who are thinking along those lines. All right. So do we have any other questions pop up when I got drone striked?
I haven't seen anything jump out, but I'm sure some guys will throw some out there. Just people are really concerned for your well-being after China, tried to kill you.
I saw a balloon outside, Yeah, so you guys can we'll do last call for now. You guys can start throwing out your final questions, and we'll begin wrapping it up. And so this is going to be a longer season, as we've talked about. I want to ask a question, and maybe we'll get some comments on that. But at least, what do you guys think about these? Are you okay with the episode format and the length and everything? Because I'm trying to consider all audiences and not do like hour-long friggin' episodes and stuff like that. But what are y'all's thoughts on that, watching it?
I think it should be a little bit longer. I kind of feel like the 20 minutes is maybe too soon, considering that, you have to wait a whole week before the next one airs. It seems like it goes really fast. So I would say for the next one, maybe at minimum 30 minutes, but maybe more realistically 45 or something. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Jared?
Yeah, same thing. I think if you're waiting a whole week in between these episodes, and you get there and it's only 20 minutes long, I think it's a little short. I think just go 30 minutes, 35 minutes or so. Give everybody a little bit more time for their wait.
All right, cool. Sounds good. Yeah, I would like to do longer ones. So it's good to see people wanting that as well. That means more crashing in my editor. So the longer the
at the end
episode,
of the day, it's your show, and you have to run it the way you want to.
Right, but I wanted y'all's feedback, and the people who are actually watching this live, I think, are the more dedicated people. So that's why I wanted to ask that in here to get y'all's perspective, and the people who are giving a shit enough to actually watch this, and hear us talk about it. I think they deserve to get their voice heard.
These 20-minute episodes are like an edge session. I mean,
I think some of them are kind of long. I think we have a couple 38-minute long ones. And I don't know why I did these first couple ones so short. I can't tell you. It could have been the videos I was working off of. That's a pretty big deciding factor. But yeah, the ones with you guys out there on the ground, they're going to be longer like this one. So maybe people will be pleased with that one. But when you guys are watching it live and chatting, I'm writing this shit down. So that goes in the notes for next year, that it's okay to do longer episodes. Like I'm kind of worried about the TikTok crowd, and them tuning out. But I just watched it on my TV, a full TV, for the first time. And I was hanging out with Roy, eating and watching it, and I was like, yeah, this is short.
So my family, this has been like a family fun day since this thing started, and that's my kids are always like, why is it over already?
That's okay, cool.
They've got short attention spans, so if that tells you anything.
Yeah, that's good to know. Well, as she said, longer is better. So all right, do we have any final questions before I go out balloon hunting again?
Is your trip all right?
Yeah, it's I'm short time on the road, but I was down there in y'all stomping grounds earlier today. Dude, it's actually warm today, so drove down there in the quad with my puff jacket on. I got out and started walking around. I was like, man, it's pretty warm out here. Those guys were bumming.
I'm in Pittsburgh this weekend here at my other place. up north here in Pittsburgh, and it's pretty warm here today too. It's in the mid 50s, I think.
Something that would be cool is a 2v2, two versus two, two hunters, two survivors. Okay, that's been on the notepad for future stuff. So the first season was going to be very different. I don't think I ever talked about that, but I'm gonna try to work out a team on team event one day. That'll be pretty cool. So another question: did Jared wish he had some equipment that he did not? Was there anything missing in your loadout, Jared?
Just food, because you didn't give me any food. I was getting hungry there at the end of the first day.
Well, you're getting ahead of us. We're talking about you as the hunter.
Yeah, that was my hunter day. I didn't have any food that day either.
You didn't start with any food?
No.
Okay, well that's on your scout support, man. That was on Bill. He was in charge of y'all stuff. So
and
not responsible for that one.
in all honesty, I wasn't even really thinking about food until later in the day, and it really wasn't a big deal. I mean, if I go hungry for a night, I go hungry for a night. It's not the worst thing I've ever been through.
If he dies, he dies. So
That's right.
How would thermal change this game? That's coming for sure. So we do have this one. We have night vision capabilities, like good night vision, and you guys will see how that plays out. So thermal would definitely be a game changer, and I'm gonna one up everybody who's excited about a handheld thermal device. I'm gonna one up that next year, but it definitely, depending on the device, how good it is and how it's working, like it's for night operations, it definitely has an effect on it.
I'm going to say, although it absolutely would be a perk, particularly at night for the hunter, I don't think it's like an end all be all. I think people get these like false impressions that, like flare and thermal is just like, oh my God, if you have this, it's over. No chance. You're done. You're dead. Guys, it's not the case. All right. There's so much vegetation out there. A lot of times I was under serious canopy from the overhead of the trees. And even if your drone had any type of flare or thermal camera on it, you ain't fucking seeing me. 100%. 100%. So
and there's so much deadfall out there that you can get underneath to hide from it all too.
Well, I think that's all being exacerbated by this stuff in Russia and Ukraine. Like, I see some of the footage with the drones overhead, and those dummies are just laying out there in the open, or they're sitting in their tanks with their turrets open. I mean, that's just so. It's just like what you guys talked about earlier about. You think you're so close, you can hear the guy and all that, but all the vegetation between you two, it's the same moving with sights. Like, if you're like thermals and FLIR, it's going to help, but that's if the guy is still just walking around out in the open. You got the overhead canopy, but if you think about a dude maybe even on an elevated position looking down, you should not have all this open terrain between you and where you think your hunter is. You're going to be using all this terrain to your advantage. So a lot of this stuff is tactics and hardcore in the weed stuff, which is it's a lot of stuff we're taught and everything, but that's the stuff like when we do this SERE school. Wow, when we actually teach people this stuff, that's all this nitty gritty stuff we're going to get into. Because one thing that was really impressive with Eric Coleman in the first season was how quickly he picked up on that stuff. Just coming from the backpacker world, and then I could see on his camera he would just kind of walk out into the open and then just be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I should get behind, because you guys are cussing the manzanitas, but at the same time, they could also be your friend, So Brent's crawling around through this stuff in like tiny little foxholes and using tiny game trails to get through these things. But it's also an advantage to him because he knows if Jared wants to get in there to get him, he's got to go through the same garbage, Like in Germany, we would purposely set up certain OPs and stuff around the worst briar patches possible, because if the enemy wanted to come straight at us, you know, they were going to be bumming, especially at night, running through thorns and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you guys think back to this last episode where I'm like, you know, crawling, you know, through that man's knees, look at over me. Look how much vegetation's over me. Like, I don't give a shit what freaking optical system you have on your drone or, you know, whatever the hunter's equipped with. He ain't seeing me in that thick stuff. You know, you think Apache helicopters and you see footage of them flying over, you know, at one of these army bases and, you know, flying over, you know, heavy vegetated woods and stuff. Like, why don't you see the deer and the hogs and all the other wildlife that's down there in the woods when they're flying over through their flare? You don't see it. It's because they're under the canopy. So it's like people, like I said, have a false perception that like this is some, you know, super wonder weapon. It is good. Don't get me wrong. But just like Jared said, it's like, it's good when they're out in the open, you know. And then I just watched a video, which I can't remember if I sent it to you guys or not. It was a video from Ukraine. And it's literally 2 Ukrainians. One guy's loading weapons. The other one's doing the fighting. And from his trench, he's literally fighting off a whole squad of Russian troops advancing on his trench. They're like 5 meters from each other at one point. Like, this is fucking World War I shit over there, right? And it's like you see the clips of, you know, a drone flying overhead dropping a hand grenade. I guarantee you there was probably thousands of hours of footage of nothing from that drone before they finally got that one little, you know, token propaganda snippet that they put out there. Plus, you know, drones don't fly with immunity in a war zone. I love to tell you guys. So a lot of false propaganda.
Even our best military stuff. Like I've sat behind our raid cameras in Afghanistan. I've looked at the PTIDs, that big old blimp that can see for 30 kilometers. Like it has all the latest and greatest. And, you know, yeah, it can see a guy in broad daylight or even at night in thermals from about 30 kilometers. But as soon as he steps behind a crappy mud wall, he's gone, you know, or any vegetation. But yeah, that's just all like the standard tactics, you know, like if you can be seen during the day, you can be seen in thermals and FLIR and all that. And, you know, it's all just things like you guys are thinking about on the ground. And the way the terrain is, I think that's a big determining factor. The foliage and the terrain. I think that's a big, you know, that hurts you guys and helps you at the same time. So here's another question popping up for both of you guys. Is there anything you wish you knew before you came out?
Ooh, yeah. I wish I would have known that well, crap, I can't say that. Gotta get ahead of myself. Jared, you go. Maybe I'll think something. I can't. What I want to say, I can't say yet.
Right. I don't know if there's anything I wish I would have known. You know, I was anticipating so many different scenarios happening. So I was expecting the unexpected, basically. Even when you guys were down there abducting Brent and kidnapping him, I'm thinking, well, maybe, and this is in my head thinking, well, maybe they're capturing him and they're going to come up here and capture me, and then the two of us have to go out together and kind of survive together and hide from you guys, or maybe Brent's going to actually be hunting me this time, or whatever. You know, I didn't trust anything that you guys were saying, and I was expecting anything and everything to happen. So at some point, you just have to kind of go with it and just go with what the circumstances are, and just deal with it at the time.
I'm happy to hear that both times nobody trusted anybody. So that's good. I'll just keep it rolling. I want everybody to come out here just wondering like, yeah, we're all getting captured and duct taped to each other. Somebody had a good idea. I think he sent me an email today, or it could have been a comment about totally throwing the guy off. Like we have plenty of ways to capture guys and surprise them, but the guy used Brent as an example. He's like, yeah, so next time tell him he's flying out to your area, but host the event in Texas and just capture him when he shows up to the airport. It's like some what's that movie with Will Ferrell when they go around capturing their college fraternity guys in their vans? Like, you just imagine sandbagging a dude at a public airport in broad daylight and driving away with him in a van. But that would catch him off guard.
You just got to be careful because it's like, you know what I mean? I was armed when I got captured, and it's like I'm not drawing my pistol because I know this is part of the simulation, right? But if you're pulling up in a freaking child molestation van at DFW airport when I'm thinking I'm flying to San Diego, like I'm not thinking SERE challenge at that point.
Yeah, I know. Wear some Antifa shirts and just come out, you know, use different. We'll just hire some local kids to capture you. That'd be, that would be some interesting footage.
There would be some local dead kids then.
Absolutely.
All right. So any more questions, guys, and we'll wrap this up.
Yeah. So one guy said, here, I'll highlight it. He goes, Brent knew he was getting any sleep. It's like, I look back, guys, all the signs were there. Everything was there. And I was dead set. I'm like, hey, this is going to start tomorrow morning. Why would this start now? It's like when I think about it now, and it all makes sense, right? So I probably should have been more like Jared, but he had already been on the ground way longer than I. I'm thinking I'm rolling in here in the wee hours of the night, and it's like, yeah, go, put on all the stuff you're gonna wear for the SERE challenge. We just gotta do some extra filming, and you got to get this brief real quick. We're gonna film it, Like, oh yeah, no problem. Hey, do I need this for the camera? Nah, you're good. All the signs were there, and just like, whoop, didn't think about anything of it. So,
well, maybe like if people don't realize it, you guys are coming out there and you're expecting a minimum of a 48-hour operation because let's say it's a possibility, let's say both guys require the whole 24 hours before something happens. That's like I told you guys in the briefing, and I put it in the first episode, that we'll take a little pause to reset and then we roll into the next one. And part of that is you guys as the contestants, it's up to you to try to sleep or get rest if you want to out there. So like in the first season, Eric wanted to come get some rest up there near us, the hunting team, because he thought Bill was going to sleep for the night or something. And so that was totally up to him. We're not going to dictate that stuff. So is there a possibility to do something like this in a kind of urban environment? I'm trying to figure it out. I've been bouncing some ideas off of people and trying to see what we can come up with. The problem is just dealing with other people in an organized environment. That's the problem, because there's so many things that could go wrong. Like we talked about capturing somebody in broad daylight at the airport. Like, the authorities will be called. Something will get involved. So I'm trying to think, like, if I can figure something out like that, like maybe it wouldn't be in a heavy urban environment, but a small town or something. Because they do the Army used to do awesome training in Europe, and so whenever they would do SERE stuff in Europe, a lot, like in the 50s and 60s, they didn't have we didn't have these training grounds in Europe that we do now. All of Germany was a training ground. So they would do fire maneuver operations in German villages and like blow up people's houses on accident and drive through their gardens and everything. So it would be something like that. And then I would have to plan on how to incorporate the local authorities. So I don't think it would be a stretch to talk to the sheriffs, of a given area and be like, hey, we're going to be doing this event. It's going to be a little weird. So if you get some calls, and then maybe even get them involved, because at the end of the day, if you are evading, you shouldn't be getting caught by anybody, even if it's non-role players, so it's possible. And we're trying to figure it out. That's the thing, is Plus the risk goes up dramatically. You know, these guys sign a waiver and everybody's understanding that things could go wrong, people could get hurt, but if you're in a built up environment with other people and stuff like that, you know, I can just picture us trying to capture Brent. He tries to defend himself. Some local concealed carries try to help him, and people getting shot, and and I'd be like, keep the cameras rolling. We're gonna keep rolling until we're in jail. We ain't stopping. Maybe that's when we do the first live event. So instead of the GoPro and me editing it all, it's just 100% live.
My 2 cents, Randall's. I think you got a great thing going on. I think that terrain is absolutely perfect. If anything, maybe just changing the AO and some of the stuff we talked about with time frames for LZ pickups. And if you miss your window, well, guess what, dude? You got a new LZ located fucking,
clear across the other side of the AO.
10 clicks in the opposite direction you just came from. See you in 8 hours.
Yeah, I was actually going to keep that a secret because that's going to be used, but that'll definitely up the challenge. We're also going to change up, who's like the support for each person and how that all works. There's a lot of ways to have fun with it. So before I read this question, we also do have the option of other AOs out here. We've designated, I think we have 3 giant plots of land now that we've designated. So, let's say we go out there to use the main area, and there's, I don't know, campers or some event going on, whatever. Then we have like 2 other courses of action. All right, well, let's go to this area now. So I'm also considering for future ones using 2 areas for the same event. So then the hunter and survivor, it's totally different areas. So there's possibilities like that too, but that's what's great about this area. It's, you can do whatever the hell you want and there's plenty of space. So this question is, would Jared or Brent as a survivor could have used a pair of pruning shears to deal with the manzanitas? Would it have helped? I mean, or a machete or something?
I don't think so.
I doubt it.
I mean, you guys will see at some points, going through the manzanitas wasn't possible. Literally walking on top of them was a possibility. So, if
you had pruning shears or a machete, you're going to spend so much time just trying to hack your way through and make a tunnel through it. And it's easier just to go through it or on top of it, like Brent said.
Yeah, I deal with that stuff on my property, and if it's in my way, I usually just set it on fire because cutting it up with a chainsaw is a pain in the ass because it's so dense and tough. It's just thin enough to where you can barely get it with a chainsaw. Like if you try to do like pruning stuff with a chainsaw, it could throw the chain off, and it doesn't work that well. It's like that, but it's also dense enough to be a pain. You can't just chop it with an axe. So that manzanita stuff, man, like I think the joke of this series is going to be first place as manzanitas, and then the first guy who made it in time, because that's the major suck out there. I saw another good question scroll by. Here's one. What is the size of the area you guys have been doing? So the main event it's 3,200 acres. That's like 6 square miles. And that is a big chunk of land for people. If I knew, I think, let's see, I know we got Europeans watching. So 3,200 acres, it should be about 1,600 hectares, I believe. But there's so many freaking, there's a major hilltop that they're getting to, at least for this one, for the extraction point. There's multiple other hilltops, like all these saddles. I mean, there's every freaking major terrain feature out there. That's what's cool about it. It's you don't necessarily need, like 100 square miles to do this stuff in. It's really the terrain that makes the area feel bigger. Because even though while I'm out there screwing around on my own, I know this area very well. it still kicks my ass. If I'm busting brush, walking around in it, and I'm not even trying to evade or anything, I'm still usually just like, yeah, this is tough. All right, so 3,200 acres is 1,200 something hectares. All right, thanks, man. Some of the metric stuff is very simple, and yeah, that one's way off. Because I know 1 meter is about a yard. It's just shorter than a yard, which is about 3 feet almost. Yeah, so we can do the final thoughts and start to wrap this up. No, manzanitas don't have thorns. Luckily, if they had thorns, they would be the most epic freaking barricade on the planet.
Yeah, their thickness, they make up for the thorns with their thickness and how much of it there is. It's unreal.
I was finding manzanita brush and berries and stuff in my pockets after I got home for months.
Yeah.
I mean, it just gets everywhere.
Yeah, Bill used some of my stuff when he was out here, and I went to wash it, and I got in trouble because there was a bunch of the berries and twigs and shit left over in the washer after that. I got yelled at for it. All right, so that was episode 3. Wrapping up. The next one will be same time, same channel, 1500 standard time. And so Brent has escaped, and where are we at now? You got about 19 hours left, and I believe just under 2 miles to go. So that's a long way to go, but that's also plenty of time. And you guys are going to see in the coming episodes, it's going to be both contestants are getting settled in and they're figuring out how this is going to work. So, the next episode, you'll kind of see they start to get comfortable and really start to work at it. So we can go with the final thoughts on at least this episode and everything before it. So Brent, Survivor man.
Yeah, just it's exciting to finally get the episode where it's like, hey, I'm out on my own, and this is the bread and butter of what the SERE challenge is all about. So it's exciting to finally see this in all perspective. Randall let us keep all the footage that we shot ourselves out there with the expectation we weren't going to share any of that footage. So I haven't seen any of the other footage, right? None of the stuff that Jared took, none of the stuff that the staff took. So seeing all that other footage and then tying it all together, it's like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Like, I remember what I was doing at that particular time when they showed that clip. It's interesting to see what like the other guys are doing at the same time. So it's just been a fantastic and great opportunity. And somebody asked, what if I change anything, from what I did in this first episode. And no, I think I played it pretty well. My idea was to sprint off and get as much time distance gap as possible, get camouflage, get the flexi cuff off, figure out what gear I had, figure out what the situation was on the ground, and then reorient myself from there. So that's where I'm at. So turn it over to you, Jared.
No, I think it was good. Yeah, I don't think either one of us would have done anything different. At least not up to this point. I don't want to give too much away for the future episodes coming up here. But yeah, well, once we got comfortable and got into a routine and a pattern out there, it just kind of flowed like that. So I think it went really well. And like Brent said, it's interesting to see the other person. So for me, it's interesting to see Brent's perspective and where he's at and what he's going through. Because I'm going through the similar stuff at the same time as he is. I'm just the reciprocal of him. I'm hunting him, and he's the survivor. And I'm sure it'll be the same way in the future episodes when I'm the survivor and he's hunting me.
All right, so that does it, guys. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and thanks to Brent for hosting this for me, because I'm possibly getting captured out here. So I will see you guys next Sunday for the episode 4, and we'll keep this rolling. And of course, we will do another after party after that one as well, and it's going to keep getting more exciting. So I'm glad everybody's enjoying it. it's been a really fun event, and I'm happy with it. So, yep, wouldn't be doing it without these two badasses coming out there to participate in it. So, thanks. That's all I got, guys.